welcome to the studio.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for joining. I have to say first, fantastic launch video. There are so many launch videos these days that I'm suspect number one in propagating this type of content. That's let's pull Top Gun footage and let's put Freebird over it, and we're hard tech, and it's us welding. And there's a lot of that, and it's really cool. But it was getting a little played out, and you went a very different direction with this announcement. And so I just really enjoyed the launch video. But can you take us through exactly what you're launching, what this means for the company, and where the company stands today?
Sure. Day before yesterday, we officially launched our next generation service in Dallas. So, as you mentioned, Zipline has been operating these autonomous delivery services across 8 countries over the last 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
But really, this is the first time we're seeing like major metros start to launch and scale in the US. Our first customer is Walmart. And we've already announced a number of other partners like Chipotle and Sweet Green, Mendocino Farms, and a lot of the biggest health systems in the US who are all relying on this technology to automate and accelerate their deliveries from businesses or hospitals or warehouses directly to homes.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like this opportunity is underhyped today? It felt like there was a time when drone delivery, I'm sure it was when you started the company, you believed in the vision, but then it actually took years and years and years to like get to the point where we are today, which is like, it's a reality. You're partnered with Walmart. I'm going to be able to drop a burrito on John's backyard if I want.
You guys started in 2014, right? So complete overnight
2013, really. Yeah.
2013.
Yeah, we love a 10-year
We love an overnight success on this show. So congratulations.
10 years in the
You're
making.
going to be a household name soon. Everyone's going to be like, oh yeah, you just did it so quickly. Maybe I should get into that market. Maybe I should.
Hopefully it makes sense. But I think there's this trend in technology where people get excited about the potential of an opportunity, and then the reality sets in that it's really, really hard to do.
Yeah.
And then there's this period where it gets less attention, and actually is good for you because there's less people going into it. And then now I can just imagine a future where we're just seeing zip lines everywhere in the sky. Talk about your maybe excitement today. I'm sure it's more than ever.
Yeah, I agree, and there's so much to say on that front. But I think there is this obvious hype cycle curve of extraordinary excitement. This is coming tomorrow. I mean, when we started, the CEO of one of the largest tech companies in the world was on 60 Minutes promising that they were going to be doing drone delivery to every home in the US within 2 years.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so we always assumed we would be a fast follower to them. We thought they were going to lead and we would be a fast follower. Had you told me that 10 years later Zipline would be crossing 100 million commercial autonomous miles, would be the largest autonomous system on Earth of any kind, and that big technology company would be less than one 10,000th of the scale, would have seemed impossible. I think that the main takeaway for me is that that 10 years, because then you have the hype and then you have the trough of disillusionment, I believe is what it's called.
Yeah.
And I think especially for hard tech or hardware companies, that trough of disillusionment might be like 5 to 8 years. And so for us, it was really important to walk rather than talk. It's really easy to talk, and maybe that's apropos of what you were talking about on the launch video side, John.
Yeah.
But if you just focus on walking and focus on these small use cases. We started by delivering just blood to 21 different hospitals. It was such a very narrow, clear thing that we needed to do, and we're also willing to do very unfancy things like operate in countries that are hard to get to and get our hands dirty and figure out really hard, unfancy problems like how do you operate in all kinds of gnarly weather, rain, thunderstorms, snow and icing conditions. These are hard problems. It's probably a bit similar to autonomous cars in that way too, that there's a lot of hype and then the reality sets in of what it's going to take to make these systems work at scale.
Can you talk a little bit about the regulatory environment? It seems like you probably couldn't have just gone straight to the American market because of the regulations, but you found a way anyway, and I love that. Is that actually a bull case for the regulatory regime in America working as intended? And we should have companies that can go test things elsewhere and then bring it back when it's mature and the technology is ready? Or are there specific regulatory changes that you'd like to see over the next decade to either spur more innovation or just make what you do easier?
It's a good question. When we were launching, we really had this sense there was such an unclear regulatory environment with regard to what we were proposing. We thought someone would build an automated logistics system for
Hmm.
Earth. That
Hmm.
seemed like a really important idea, but it was so unclear from a regulatory perspective that I think we really just concluded we have got to go do the most obvious life-saving thing imaginable
Yeah.
because that would maximize the chances that we could I mean, it was both powerful because it was an amazing mission and because it would maximize the chances that we could innovate and get started and operate in the real world. And so we needed a public healthcare system to do that.
Hmm.
We didn't want to work with a whole bunch of, helter-skelter health systems, which you kind of have in the US. We thought
Yeah.
it'd be good if we could have a public healthcare system. And so that immediately caused us to go to certain parts of the world.
Sure.
And then I think also there's just a lot of, people think, oh, the regulatory environment must be so different in Africa than in the US. Actually, not true.
Hmm.
Pretty much the same regulatory regime when it comes to airspace because planes fly back and forth between them. So you
Hmm.
need the same rules. I
Interesting.
think the difference was finding a government that behaves more like a startup, a small,
Sure.
agile government that is willing to make decisions and exhibit more like, yeah, just executive decision making.
Yeah.
So those were really the things that made Rwanda such a powerful place for us to get started. And it was about 6 years later, at that point we had about 50 million commercial autonomous miles and zero human safety incidents. That's the
Wow.
moment when we thought, hey, this is a good time to bring this massive data set to the FAA
Yeah.
and kind of help them see like this technology is ready for prime time, it's safe. Once we did that, it then took about 5 years from then until, where we are today, where Zipline's the only company in U.S. history that's been awarded like full permission to fly beyond visual line of sight in all 50 states. So I think
Wow.
part
So
of it was building that data set, showing that it can be safe, and then part of it was working directly with the regulator in the U.S. To help make sure that the U.S. doesn't fall too far behind in this core area of new technology.
Yeah.
the immediate benefit, as your network rolls out, I love the idea of just being able to press a button and get, an item, in minutes. It's obviously been a dream, I think, for so many people for so long. Can you talk about some of the second order effects that you're anticipating? We're here in LA. I can imagine like a lot of traffic on the roads is just like items being delivered, and it just so happens that it's a human in a car right now. And so with Zipline, when Zipline rolls out here, I can imagine that there would just immediately be less congestion. But that's just me, making a bold, potential prediction. But I'm curious how you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing is we're already seeing this. I think people don't necessarily appreciate how massively instant delivery has scaled in the last 5 years. I mean, it was obviously accelerated by COVID, but we're going to do 5.5 billion instant deliveries in the US this year alone. And we're using three to
Wait,
four
wait,
thousand pound, three to four
wait.
thousand
Sorry.
pound gas combustion vehicle driven by a human to
Yeah.
deliver something to
Wow.
your home that weighs 5 pounds.
That's
So,
so much.
you,
That's
you don't have
insane.
to be a physicist to realize like this is actually a bizarre solution. We're using technology that's 100 years old to solve a problem that's like 5 years old and to serve a market that's growing super fast. So we think it's super obvious that
Yeah.
if you want to deliver something fast that weighs 5 pounds, you probably want to do that with a vehicle that weighs 50 pounds, and
Hmm.
you want the vehicle to be electric and autonomous.
Yeah.
As
Can you
soon as
talk?
you realize that, then I think the future you have this a secret about the
Yeah, the
future that
other
most people don't know.
the other thing is
Yeah.
like I personally, if I'm ordering delivery, it's like, do I really want this person to have to go to CVS and get
Yep.
Advil? Like technically, that it's like a form of employment.
Might be
They're opting
affordable,
into
but
it, but like
yeah.
it's like, oh, I'll just do it myself.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
a bit of
Yeah.
a hassle. But when it's fully autonomous and
Yep.
it's literally like an extension, of the service that I'm using to get the item,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah. I want to talk
You'll
about
use it a
the.
lot more.
Oh
yeah.
And
yeah.
actually just on that front, I
Yeah.
mean, the customer behaviors we're seeing just in the last year in the US are quite mind-blowing. I mean, first of all, I may have thought, oh, maybe it'll be these like tech adopters and some of these, you know, I don't know, nerdier. No, no, it's like moms and grandmas who are like our
Interesting.
Yeah.
power users.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And more important than that, I mean, you talk to them, and we have users who've ordered 300 times in the last 12 months. So this is
Wow.
like a part of their
Daily
daily.
driver.
It's way different. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was talking to a woman who
Yeah.
said, she's 78 years old. She orders she goes to the grocery store once a week, and then she orders about she orders from Zipline 3 to 4 times a week.
Wow.
And as I was as I was talking to her, she's like, yeah, you don't get it. I mean, this saves me like 5 hours a week. It's totally priceless. There's no way I go back to the old way of doing things. When the weather's bad, I don't want to risk my health or I like fall down and get hurt. She
Hmm.
has a lot of friends who might, either single moms who it's not as easy to get out of the house, or,
Hmm.
older people who it's not that easy to get to the store. I mean, I think people underestimate, yeah, if you make it super fast and convenient, this is something people actually use every day, not every week or every month.
Yeah.
Yeah, even just thinking parents, right? I
Yeah.
think every parent's had the experience. It's bedtime, and like you realize there's no diapers,
Yeah.
whatever. And so then it's like, well, are we gonna like get
Yep.
the kids and go to CVS or whatever to like
It's
get
crazy.
diapers,
Yeah,
and
it's
they don't
rough.
have the brand. So it's like I can just think of
Yeah.
so many use cases where it's just like, oh yeah, we're all
Yeah.
we're gonna delay bedtime by 15 minutes.
On the
And Jordy,
evolution.
Jordy, as someone who has a 1-year-old and 3-year-old at home,
Oh,
like
cool.
these kinds of systems operate 24/7,
Yeah.
Yeah,
which is also
It's
pretty
amazing.
game changing
Yeah,
relative to the
totally.
way we currently think of logistics. It's a really big deal to have
Yeah.
something that is always available whenever your kid happens to wake up or isn't feeling well.
Yeah. On the topic of the evolution of the actual technology that you're building, I always thought the name was interesting because obviously it's a metaphor for a zip line that just goes from one place to another. But then you were catching the drones with something that looked kind of like a zip line, and now you have the mothership drone dropping a smaller drone with something that looks like a zip line. How I guess when in the evolution of the company did you come up with the mothership and baby ship? I don't know what you call it, like system.
The delivery
And
zip is what we call it. Yeah.
what do you call it?
We call it a delivery zip.
Delivery zip. Okay, and yeah.
Mhm.
So how did you come to the pairing system, and why is that important? And what's the evolution of the technology been?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good question. So first of all, Zipline spent 10 years operating these kind of more long range systems. At Platform One, you can actually see some of them sitting right here waiting to out and begin making deliveries.
It's fixed
And
wing, right?
um, yeah, it's a plane. And so
Yeah.
this aircraft can fly 300 kilometers on a single battery charge. So it's all about range
Yep.
and serving like very rural hospitals and health facilities.
Hmm.
For Platform Two, it's becoming obvious to us that home delivery is, it's by far like the holy grail. I mean, that's what automated logistics really has to solve
Hmm.
globally. And the most important thing is you want to be able to deliver quietly, like silently.
Hmm.
You want to deliver silently. It needs to be extremely safe. You need to be able to deliver gently and with dinner plate level accuracy is kind of how we describe it.
Hmm.
That's actually super hard to do. And you see a lot of other
it
companies
sounds
talking
hard.
about
You don't have to stress that. It sounds
if
very hard to
It
do.
sounds
if
extremely
you
hard.
if well if you see the way other companies are talking about solving this problem, a lot of times they're talking about like descending, an octocopter of death. I mean, it looks like a
Yeah.
lawnmower, that like within 10 feet of your home, it's incredibly loud, it's
Yeah.
incredibly disruptive to your neighbors. It's not really a part of like we think, new technology, it needs to be part of a beautiful, serene world that we would like be proud to hand to our kids. And
Yeah.
so, the big advantage of designing the system in this way is that the you know the aircraft is staying 100 meters in the air. The aircraft is first of all designed to be extremely quiet, and then
Hmm.
on top of that, it is far safer because it is staying far away from you, your family, your pets. Only thing that's coming close to your home is the delivery zip, which you can see behind me. This thing is, inspired by Eve from Wall-E.
Yeah,
If you guys have,
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, was there specific sci-fi that you and the team just love that you kind of reference?
I think
Does
we're
Because
sound
really
like
like,
the
into solar
Terminator over there.
punk. Have you
Solar
guys
punk.
heard of solar punk?
Oh yeah,
yeah,
of course.
Yeah, I think that really to me is nobody talks about that. And so much of, I mean, a huge sci-fi nerd, and obviously so much of it is kind of apocalyptic and the
Yeah.
robots are out to kill you. And
Yeah.
we're like, well, what if in the future robots are trying to save your life?
I
That's
mean,
that's a
yeah.
different
yeah,
take. And I
That
think I
completely
think
came across in the video. The video was very saturated, very orange, very like sunny day, and it was just so pastoral and lovely. I really liked it as like a different vision of the future. It was cool.
and to Jordy's point, I think that uh these kinds of systems, people are often like, oh, it's going to be so loud, and it's, the sky is going to be darkened with drones. It's like, it's kind of funny. It's the same way people actually originally felt about cars. If you go and like read the,
Oh yeah,
if you
yeah,
read
yeah.
the newspaper articles from like 1910, people thought, cars were going to be the scourge of cities. But I think the reality is actually this is going to take a lot of delivery vehicles off of the roads. This is going to reduce traffic in our neighborhoods. This will reduce pollution in our neighborhoods, improve air quality. They'll reduce noise because these systems are ultimately much quieter than cars. I think there are a lot of pretty exciting advantages when you just, yeah, I think the the world 10 or 15 years from now can actually be far more beautiful. Like we can hand
Totally.
space back to humans. Like
Mhm.
your kids could be playing hockey in the street again, which
Yeah.
I think today you just don't do anymore. You don't want,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
between all the
Have
cars
you,
zipping.
Yeah.
could you talk about any thoughts, ideas around larger payloads? Like, we've seen like airship startups emerge that are, basically building like big blimps that could deliver, something closer to
Kind of a competitor to the cargo ship almost.
yeah, the cargo
That's what they're
ship
pitching
or
that
some of these
for.
bigger,
But even like the flying car startups that are trying to ferry individuals around, I'm sure you're like loosely aware of the technology there.
but yeah, in many ways, like, doing these like ultra small drones and with super precise delivery feels a lot harder than just like lifting up, basically an airship bus and going from point A to point B. But is that at all? I'm sure you guys have thought about it. Any immediate thoughts?
The market that Zipline is focused on, instant delivery, is one of the biggest markets on earth. And it's just such a huge problem. And keep in mind, really today, it's only available to rich people in the US.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
way too expensive. Like even just in the US, it's not universally available, not to mention the 7.5 billion people who don't live in the US globally.
Yeah.
So we actually think that as you automate, as you decrease the price, as you expand access and make it universal, I mean, we're going to continue to see 10 or even 50x growth in instant delivery globally. So whereas 5.5 billion deliveries might seem like a lot in the US, we actually think there's probably demand for 50 billion deliveries,
Wow.
Yeah.
instant deliveries in the US. So I guess long story short, we've got our work cut out for us, just focused on logistics.
Yeah.
I think, we deliver this system delivers an 8-pound payload. It's designed to deliver an 8-pound payload. 8 pounds is actually a lot. That's like a big grocery bag.
Yeah.
It's dinner for 4 to 8 people, depending on what you're ordering.
It's a small
And
dog.
I think ultimately these kinds of systems, if you can get a system that can do, say, 1 billion, instant deliveries of these kinds of packages, it is actually likely that you would be able to then scale that autonomy stack up relatively easy to carry humans, for example. I mean, I think carrying humans is a far harder problem, and it'll be interesting to see, where that plays out over the next 10 or 15 years.
Well, last question, then we'll let you go if you have time. I would love to know about, obviously everyone's thinking about tariffs and whatnot, but how are you thinking about scaling up manufacturing? It seems like you have product market fit, you've solved the regulatory risk, the technical risk. What's next in terms of scaling up manufacturing? Are you building like a gigafactory for these things at some point? And is that just like an entirely new challenge that you foresee on the future?
Zipline has always manufactured everything in the US. And so one of the advantages, obviously there's this huge competition playing out between, it's kind of great power competition between the US and China. And I think that a lot of that competition is going to revolve around key areas of technology, and everybody's talking about drones. I think the current perception is that that China dominates drone manufacturing. And that is true for like DJI quadcopters that are plastic and take pictures. But the good news is there are a few companies that are completely focused on manufacturing in the US. There are US companies driving different classes of vehicles. Anduril would be another good example, Neros. And ultimately Zipline it's not even because it's more efficient from a global supply chain perspective to manufacture in the US, which in our case it is. But actually the most important consideration is, if you're a truly innovative company, you want manufacturing and engineering to be right next to each other. Like Zipline, so I'm actually downstairs at our headquarters. This is now kind of like an engineering prototyping space. About a third of a mile away, we have a very large factory, and we're scaling that to build about 55,000 aircraft a year in their first full year of production. You guys should come visit if you want.
Love to.
But I think that. And by the way, that's in South San Francisco. So I think people are often surprised that you can like achieve that level of scale in California.
You're doing the reindustrialized meme.
You're
doing it
Yes,
live.
exactly.
I love it.
But it's just all about engineering and manufacturing together. Like the ability for engineers to go get hands on their own parts, to start to understand, but how does that part actually get built? What does quality look like? And to be able to rapidly change parts of the assembly process if necessary, to achieve reliability, safety, and cost. These things are so much easier to do if you do them all in the same place.
Sorry, I have so many more questions. We'll let you go, but I have one more. Are there any like huge developments in either like open source technologies? You see all this development with AI that's getting better and better, or even just like partners. For a while, there were companies that were thinking about drones as we'll build the operating system for drones and we'll vend into a company like Zipline. Have there been any other key partners or technologies that have really, you've kind of built on the shoulders of giants, so to speak, or has it really just been like, you got to build everything from scratch?
Yeah, it's interesting. I hoped that what you just said would happen. And in
Mm-hmm.
fact, when we started, we were using a lot of off-the-shelf components. We used an off-the-shelf IMU, off-the-shelf
Mm-hmm.
GPS system. We used we were using something called RTK differential GPS. We
Yeah,
were using even for the first few months, we were using off-the-shelf autopilot. Like all of
sure.
these systems kind of failed. And I would say
Interesting.
it's actually very similar. When Tesla got started, they
Yeah.
were like, oh, we're going to use an off-the-shelf Lotus Elise chassis and an
Yep.
off-the-shelf battery pack that we're buying. We just combine them together and we're going to have a good product.
Yep.
Turns out like they were wrong. Like to actually build a great electric vehicle, they had to design the battery pack from scratch. They had to design the entire car around
Mm-hmm.
the battery. Zipline found itself in a very similar position where no one is building electric aircraft at
Mm-hmm.
commercial scale. Zipline
Mm-hmm.
is the only company that is operating a full fleet of commercial aircraft at this scale. And so it means we had to design the battery completely from scratch. We had to design a flight computer completely from scratch. We had to design the motor completely from scratch um, because ultimately what all of our customers care about is just teleportation. They just want something to go from point A to point B fast enough to save a human life.
Mm-hmm.
And that means we have to make it safe, reliable, cost effective. And the way to ultimately do that has been to design every component around the use case, really. And so
Yeah.
that's
Well, it's amazing too that you started in this like ultra high stakes use case, which is blood delivery, where
Yeah.
if you mess up, there's like, massive, the biggest consequences. And then now everybody else, every other American can get their burrito or their cheeseburger, reliably with the
There's
same
really like a peace
reliability as,
dividend, right?
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. Well, we'd love to have you back on soon.
Yeah,
This was fantastic.
It's so fun to watch the strategy play
I'm
out.
just genuinely so excited.
I'm so excited
to be a DAU,
Yes.
a Zipline DAU. So.
I think you're gonna be more than DAU 3 times a day.
Yeah.
Jordan's gonna be doing 1,000
exactly.
deliveries a day. As soon as you get
Hourly
Erewhon
average
on board,
user,
as-
HAU.
yeah, hourly. Yeah, as soon as you get Erewhon on boarded, it's game over. You're gonna be profitable. Don't worry
No,
about
I don't think this is priced in yet, to be honest.
not priced in.
I think it's gonna be like, imagine people, shopping, like, the whole like drunk shopping meme. It's not just like instant delivery
it's gonna be
on
amazing.
you want food or groceries. It's like, imagine being able to like see an item on Instagram, shopping or whatever, get an ad and get it like 30 minutes later. That's gonna change.
It's going to change everything. This is
So,
so awesome. I'm really excited for you. So congratulations on the overnight success. Thank you for your
It's
service.
been so easy.
Yeah, thanks for the 11 years of hard work.
You make it look easy.
But we really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all that with us. This is very fascinating. Thank you. And seriously, congrats.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.
We'll talk to you soon.
Talk soon.
Bye.